What's up, guys? This is Seville with another DC Collectibles action figure review. And today, it's all about Superman. I'm going to be comparing this animated series 2-pack featuring him and Lois Lane to the DC Universe online streaming service exclusive Justice League Superman action figure. So, if you can give me just a few more seconds, I'll have all three of these figures out of their packages. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up and comment below. And if you want to see more from me, please subscribe and hit that notification bell. Now that they're all out of the packages, I'm going to give each individual figure their own time on the spinner, that way you can see them all the way around. Currently on the spinner is the 2-pack version of Superman. I've had my eye on this set for a while, but missed my chance to get them in local stores. Then, as secondhand prices on eBay and Amazon continue to go up, I began to debate whether or not I would ever get them. Later on, I learned that the DC Universe streaming service would offer figures of their own, starting with Justice League figures based on that animated series. Therefore, I decided to start with the Superman from that line, which is now on the screen. At that time, I honestly thought this Superman would just be the one from the 2-pack repackaged in a single card. And while it has turned out to be very similar to it, it is indeed not the same figure. After ordering this one, thanks to a tip from Brad the DC Universe Geek, I learned that the 2-pack was on Big Bad Toy Store for roughly $45, which was much cheaper than it had been anywhere else in recent weeks. Therefore, I quickly ordered that pack as well, and decided to turn this into a comparison video, just in case there's anyone else who's been out there deciding which one to get. Once Lois finishes her spin, I'll show a few pictures of the animated Superman next to other popular Superman figures so that you can see where they might stack up. With them on the screen now is the DC Direct Superman and the first Mattel Superman. Next up are from DC Direct based on Kingdom Come and Batman Hush, followed by two more Mattel figures based on Man of Steel and Injustice. Then finally, there's the New 52 and DC Rebirth. So now, let's take a closer look at just the two Superman figures, but don't worry, I will take a full look at the Lois Lane figure by herself a little later on. So the overall sculpt on these figures is done very cleanly, using a lot of straight lines just like the cartoons did. But there are curved lines where necessary to complete the looks. The Justice League version definitely has the larger frame between the two, especially when it comes to the V shape of the upper torso. The S-shields and head sculpts are slightly different too, plus the cape sculpt is also much larger. Adding to that, the head of the Justice League version seems a little bit smaller than the 2-pack version. While I've got it close like this, the S-shields are raised sculpts on the body. The paints on both are pretty nice and clean, but I do think it is just a little bit better on my 2-pack version. In fact, my only paint complaint on that version is that they did not paint the belt loops. However, one of the reasons most of the lines look so clean is because many of the pieces are totally separate, such as the head, neck, and shoulder area behind the cape is a totally separate piece from the main body. And that does go for both figures. Moving down the body, on the 2-pack version there is a sculpted line separating the trunks from the pants, but the Justice League version does not have that line. And when it comes to the boots, there is a sculpted line above them on the 2-pack version, but on the Justice League version, it's actually a whole other piece. The back sides of each figure do lose a lot of the details, because they probably assume you're going to have to keep down all the time anyway. So now, I'm going to move on to the articulation, and I'll do both at the same time, noting any differences. The heads do turn side to side, but neither really offer any good up and down movement. The shoulders do spin all the way around, as well as move outward. The elbows do fold to a 90-degree angle, and have rotation at the same joint. The wrists also have full rotation, as well as some up and down movement, but the Justice League version offers much more range in that direction. The hips spread out pretty far, and both have the added piece for rotation, with a decent range front to back as well. The knees on 2-pack version don't fold very far, but the ankles do pretty well up and down. The knees on the Justice League version do much better, plus there is rotation at the top of the boots, and the ankles do pretty well. Since both of these figures are very top heavy, especially the Justice League one with the wider torso, the leg joints have become a bit looser since I've been messing around with them, and it's caused them to fall over a little bit more. But at least the 2-pack version does include a stand that will help with that problem. My only gripe with the stand is that it's not really tall enough to help with flight poses. But as its own piece, it is functional enough to help with standing if necessary. While on the subject of accessories, I will give a quick look at all the extra hands the 2-pack version does come with. One pair is a bit more of a closed grasp like you see on the right hand. Then there's a pair with a more curved grasp like the one here on the left. And the final pair is a more open palm, which are pretty helpful when carrying the Lois Lane figure. Speaking of Lois, now it's time for a closer look at her all by herself. And just so everyone's aware, because her feet are so tiny, she's never going to bounce on her own. She absolutely has to have the figure stand. With that out of the way though, much like the two Superman figures, she does have a very nice, clean, simple sculpt, mostly using straight lines. Similarly, there's not a lot of room for error in the paints because there are so many parts that are just totally different pieces, such as the jacket being a separate overlay on top of the main body, as well as the skirt being a separate piece underneath. It may be getting a little washed out due to the lighting, but there are sculpted details in the skirt as well. The paint on her face looks mostly good, but her left side does have a couple of extra white blotches around the eye. Articulation-wise, she does have a lot of similar points to Superman, such as the head turning side to side with only a fraction of up and down movement, but her hair really does get in the way. The shoulders do spin all the way around and move outward. The elbows don't quite hit 90 degrees, but they do rotate. The wrists also have full rotation and some really good up and down movement. Her hips do spread out and move front to back, but the skirt definitely blocks a lot of that movement. And finally, her knees do fold to a 90-degree angle. And of course, Lois does have the 3 extra sets of hands, all with grasping positions similar to Superman. So, with all that said, it's time to run through my guidelines for a complete and fair review. Neither figure meet my preference for 20 points of articulation. And while they are very similar to each other, they're not just reusing the same parts. Plus, they do have added details such as the sculpted S shields, which I did not expect. And they both look pretty screen accurate. But the larger scale of the Justice League version probably means it's out of scale with the previous Batman animated series figures, and that larger body frame makes it harder to balance. The 2-pack has plenty of accessories, but the single pack has none, which to me makes it not really worth the almost $30 price point I paid. Then, once you factor in the loosening joints, which will probably get worse over time, and the limited accessibility on any of these figures, I can only give the Justice League version a 5 out of 10 stars. Which means it's probably only worth owning for die-hard completists. However, the animated series 2-pack gets a 7 out of 10 star rating, meaning it is amazing and worth owning for all fans. Therefore, in my opinion, the 2-pack is the overall better value per dollar. Thank you guys for watching, and if you like this video,
get over here!
And subscribe to Civilian Collectibles.